Okay. Welcome everyone. Can you hear us okay? All right. So welcome to this VSME webinar. And presenting today with me are Paula, our Customer Success Manager, and Caroline, our Product Manager, and I'm Yasmina, Product Specialist. And we've all worked in the ESG area. So the agenda for today, first, Paula is gonna introduce quickly RISMA systems, since there's some people that might not know who we are. And then Caroline will take us through the VSME and the structure and disclosures of the VSME. Then I'll quickly show our platform, well, not so quickly, but we'll see, and demo our solution. And then in the end, we'll have some time for questions. All right, Paula, take it away.
Yeah, as Yasmina said, just in case there are some of you who don't know much about RISMA, a very quick introduction to us and the company. We're a software company, and we help companies with their governance, risk management, and compliance efforts. We build a GRC platform, and where you can work with GRC and consolidate all of your documentation work in one place. There are about 50 of us in RISMA across 3 different offices. So we are headquartered here in Copenhagen, and we have an office in Sweden and one in Norway. And we've worked with compliance for quite a while, for more than 10 years. So we have quite a lot of experience working with EU regulations, different standards, frameworks. Of course, we don't do this all by ourselves. We create the platform, but we collaborate very closely with established knowledge partners across the different compliance areas. They help with input and sparring in terms of the legal content that you'll see in the platform. Today we're talking about VSME, but I just wanted to quickly show you what GRC actually means in terms of an overview of all the different solutions in RISMA. We have some customers who work with just 1 or 2 solutions, or start out with 1 or 2 and then add on as they mature or as requirements change. And others apply this GRC approach from the beginning, so they take on the full suite and they work with a long range, a lot of these different regulations that you will see here. But yeah, we won't go through all of them. We'd be here all day. I'll pass it on to Caroline, who knows a lot about the VSME structure.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so VSME, I'm just gonna, maybe not all of you have had a chance to actually look at the standard. As you can see at the right, it's EFRAG Voluntary Sustainability Reporting Standard for non-listed MSEs, or also known as the VSME. Good. It's a EU standard developed by EFRAG. Important to mention is EFRAG is the same organization that created CSRD, which are the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. So this is the one that some of the bigger companies are reporting on. VSME is a voluntary ESG disclosure framework that is tailored specifically to small and medium-sized enterprises or companies. Why I mentioned that it's the same organization that created CSRD is that the VSME standard is aligned with CSRD. This means that for any smaller organization falling outside the scope of CSRD, so not required to report on CSRD, they might choose voluntarily, or they might have demands from bigger companies to report on data information. Then they can choose to report on VSME. It's aligned with CSRD, meaning that you have kind of a framework or 2 frameworks that then talk together, speak together, so that you don't have to mold your information that you report on yourself into fit into another reporting standard. The VSME standard was also created to meet these market demands. It could be, as I mentioned, smaller company or medium-sized companies wanting to create reporting share information with larger companies to meet contract demands, or even to share data with the market, with business partners. It could be business partners like banks, because there's more and more banks out there that are financial markets that offer, for example, sustainability loans, so that you can position yourself in a more strategic way, being first mover or first-ish mover within the CSRD area, and working strategically, not only, for example, competing on price, but maybe also competing on your ESG efforts. Maybe some of you have heard also about Omnibus creating a different scope for what companies should report on CSRD. And this has actually created quite a lot of focus on the VSME solution, but because potentially more companies out there is going to look into the VSME. We still don't know exactly what will happen in regards to Omnibus and what companies will report. But we do have the VSME standard ready so that you can start working within this framework that is aligned with CSRD. So it kind of creates this common language that you can now work on that is aligned.
I can maybe just add that quite a few of our customers who are potentially out of scope now are, definitely looking into perhaps switching to the VSME because, as Caroline says, it's aligned, it speaks the same language and makes sense to, to continue that framework.
Yeah. Okay, and briefly just talking about what does it contain, and obviously we will look at that more when we actually jump into the demo, but to give you an idea already now. So it's a standard that contains of two modules, a basic module and comprehensive module. It's 20 disclosures, and these disclosures is made up of 69 data points. If we just compare for fun to CSRD standard, this is 1100 plus data points. So it is quite a different size than comparing to the CSRD. We have the basic module that focus on your own operations. So this will be a lot of numbers, but also information about your own company. You can choose only to report on the basic module, or you can report on the basic module and the comprehensive module. So the comprehensive module is an extension of the basic module. I'll touch more upon that on the next slide. But before that, I also wanted to mention there's been quite a focus on DMA process of the double materiality assessment for the CSRD. This is actually not a part of VSME. So you don't need to do a DMA, double materiality assessment. Instead, for the VSME standard, they introduce what they call if applicable principle. So that if it's not applicable for your company, you can say it's not applicable, and then it's out of scope for your company.
Maybe I could just, again, sorry, add that if you've done the DMA, been through that whole process and found it valuable, at least that's what we get from a lot of the feedback we get from customers is that it's been very valuable and that they would like to continue with that process. So it will be possible to still work with DMA and RISMA, but yes, as Caroline said, it's not required. But if you love the audit process and going through all of that, then that's still possible.
Speaking about audit process, also because VSME is a voluntary standard, there's no assurance demands on the VSME when reporting on it. You can. We have also spoken to some companies saying that they are actually considering, I'm quite sure that they want to incorporate the ESG reporting in the financial reporting. Then of course it will be part of your assurance process or audit process for your financial reporting, but you don't have to. And I just want to mention this because it is quite easy in RISMA, as you're going to show, to follow all change logs and being very easily prepared to go through an audit process if you are in need of showing who did what when and showcase all of that. Cool. But let's see what it contains. So the structure of the different disclosures in the VSME. You have the basic module and the comprehensive module. For those of you who already kind of seen CSRD and what it contains, it follows quite the same logic here. So you have some general information about how you how you prepare to work with ESG as an area, and then you have the environmental matrix, social matrix, and the governance matrix. And this follows, of course, the E, the S, and the G, and kind of the same areas as in the CSRD. If you only report on the basic module, it's a quite good place to start and a easy-ish place to start. It's these 11 disclosures that you go through. Some will be relevant information for you, some is something that you need to report, and something will be out of scope for you your company, most likely. If you report on this, it's mostly data, and then there's also some information. But for companies never been working or been reporting on ESG, then this is a very nice place to start. Then you can choose to begin with, or reporting year 2 or 3 to also work with the comprehensive module. This will be building upon the information that you already provided in the basic module. So for example, just a nice example, B2 in basic module is about your practices and policies and future initiatives for transforming towards a more sustainable economy. If you report on that, it's actually just telling a yes or no, almost saying, do you have any ESG sustainability related practices or policies and so on. You don't really need to disclose that much more information around it. But if you then choose to also work with the comprehensive module, then you need to provide a description of the practices or policies, what initiatives are in place, what is your strategy with having these policies and so on. So you need to elaborate a bit more. And within the data, for example, C3, you need to tell a little bit more and show more data around how you're working with, for example, energy and greenhouse gas emissions. Yeah.
Yes.
And before jumping into the demo, wanted to talk a little bit about how do we approach this in RISMA. I know that it's also going to be something that you mentioned a little bit, but it will be really part of our onboarding process. But what we do in RISMA is that instead of printing the standard and working with just the EU language in itself, we have structured, pre-mapped all of the VSME disclosures, all of the data points, all of the guidance text that's in there, and structured it in RISMA so you get it presented one disclosure at a time, and you can see all the connection information to it. Then we also created a whole lot of action plans and controls. So a lot of tasks that you might need to set in place or delegate responsibility to your colleagues to get the information that you need, or to set up a structure to be able to report year after year. So this is kind of where you start working with the governance setup, being ready to report the first year, but also being ready to report year after year in a smart way, using the data, keeping historical data, reusing it again the next reporting year. For what you really want to get at, of course you want to work with ESG, but you also need to be able to create this report in the end of it. You might want to share a report with stakeholders, we talked about, with banks, with business partners. It's part of a contractual requirement for companies that you work with, or you might want to show it on your own web page. So this is why we are able to export a complete report at the end of it. But I think let's see it in the demo instead.
So let's see it in the demo. One step. So, all right. So here is how our VSME solution looks in RISMA. And now if you've never seen RISMA before, we just wanted to give you a little walkthrough. So now we've opened this on the user guide tab. And this is a little welcome to using the VSME solution from us. But an admin user can always configure this to give any useful tips for all of the users of the platform for your company. Furthermore, the RISMA solution always comes with these different modules, and these are dependent on which modules you're working with. So for example, the VSME comes with the compliance project, the policies, actions, and controls. And this is all you need for your VSME work. So then if you click on this logo, which would in your case be your own company logo, you will get to the My page. And now we've logged in as the ESG project manager. So we'll see all the tasks and activities that are relevant for the ESG project manager. And also a thing about RISMA is that you can create a nice user structure and give different access to different users based on what's relevant for them. And you'll also get notifications on your email about all the things that you need to do. So for example, if you have actions or controls that you need to take care of, you'll get a notification, and you can track all the data that you need to be working with on the My Page. Moving on to the main part that we're talking today about is the VSME. In the overview here, we can see the structure that we've created. This is based on the VSME structure that Caroline was just showing you. So we have the basic module that's divided into these 4 areas, and we have the 11 disclosures here. And same with the comprehensive module. So the 4 areas again, and then the 9 disclosures. And working in RISMA, we will click on the nodes. So for example, let's open this B tree, which is the energy and greenhouse gas emissions. So this is how the node would look. And Caroline also mentioned that we've added a lot of relevant data here. So you can see the disclosure text field has all the relevant data points that are connected to the B tree. Then you also have the guidance here, which is also all the guidance paragraphs that relate to the disclosure B tree. Furthermore, we have this third field that is the report draft field. And here we've created this template, and this is obviously a unique template for each of the different disclosures, where you can insert your data and use this as a starting point for your report. We'll get back to this at a later stage. Then another cool RISMA functionality is the delegation menu. So you open it with the little arrow, and here you can add all your different users for different roles. So for example, you can add the responsible user for this compliance node. You can add an accountable, consulted, and informed. Furthermore, you can add or create your organizational structure, and you could add the different organizations here as well. You can add tags and frameworks, and this is also a nice setup so you can structure your work and, for example, filter different reports. Okay, let's move to the questionnaire tab up here. So this is also a unique questionnaire for B-Tree. So here we have created questions based on the paragraphs or data points in the VSME standard. So 29, for example, has been divided into 2 questions that are here to help you with reporting what you need. In the help text here, you can see first the reporting requirements. So for example, this one is always to be reported on, meaning you always should report on it. Then you can also see here, this one is to be reported on if applicable, and this is based on the if applicable principle that Carolina was talking about. Yes. We also have some explanations here, some examples to help you understand what you're doing, and we also have added a reference to the VSME standard and the data points that we're talking about that you can see on the homepage. And once you're done with the scoping here, you can move to the gap analysis. And here we have an automated gap report or gap analysis, that you'll get, and you'll see these different automated colors that you get based on your answers. So for example, for this B-Tree questionnaire, we got this gap analysis. So we get the yellow gap for saying yes, you get a red gap for saying no, and the blue one is if you answer that you're uncertain. So this is also a nice, you'll see that something needs to be done here. in the red gap, some actions need to be done. In the blue gap, some more data collection needs to be done to understand whether or not you're reporting on it. Then you can also, if you answer not applicable, you can see it here. So you don't need to worry about those things that are not applicable for your company. And if there's any unanswered questions, you'll also get a dark gray gap. So you can also see that something needs to be answered still. And in the gap, you have some more help text here. Then you have the analysis, and clicking here, you can see why did we get this automated gap. Here you have this text field where you can add some notes, you can add a comment. For example, if a colleague needs to go in and check something, you can add a comment here or a link or whatever. Then here below the gap, you can see that we can add some mitigation to this gap. So for example, getting a yellow gap, we might want to add some controls, or getting a red gap, you need to add some actions. You could add these framework specific activities, which mean that there might be some already activated actions or controls, and which have the same framework that you do in this gap, and you can add those here. You can add recommended activities. So we've created a recommended control for each of the data points that you can use and add here. And then you also have the mitigating activities. So from here, you can choose to add any of the actions or controls from the catalogs that we provide you, or any of your own, and also link to any policies that you have. So for example, we could add a climate change policy here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I can maybe just add a few words in terms. All of this we go through during the onboarding process or during implementation. We figure out in terms of delegation and go through all of these different activities, because everyone's different. So you might also have your own controls or own actions that you'd like to add here. We've added the recommended activities to get you started. You might have some from CSID that you want to add in here. You can do that. There's just stuff we go through during the implementation, so that you're not sitting there by yourself having to figure out all of this out. I'll be there to help you, or one of my colleagues.
Yes, exactly.
Maybe we can also show that if you are ready to report on that data point.
Well, that is a good point. So here, for example, we can see that this action has been completed. All good. So now we could manually turn this gap green, because we are done. This is now done, ready to be reported on. That's a good point. And now we can also see that it changes here. And adding these activities to your gap, for example, you can see in the links tab. Then we also have this change log. That's also a functionality that we have across RISMA, where you can see all the changes that have been made and by who and when. So that is nice. Then going back to the home tab and the report draft, like I promised. So once you've done all of your scoping work and data collection, you can come back here and insert all your data here. And of course, you can also add any data that you wish to have in your report. And all of this data that you put into this template or into this report draft field will then be reflected in the management report that we will look at in a minute. Before that, I just want to show this previous report draft button that's up here. And here you can see all of the previous report drafts that you have for this disclosure B-tree. And here you would at some point have many different previous reports once you've completed them. So clicking this, you can see all the data that you've added to this report draft field the previous year, and you can use this as inspiration when needed. But now let's jump into the management reporting. So here we can see that we have these two management reports. So we have last year's report that we've created as an example, and then there is a draft for this year. You can also see who has created it, when was it last revised, and which notes, so disclosures, does it contain. You can download the latest, and we can download last year's report. You can also edit and delete reports that are still open. So for example, we could still edit the draft reports, but we cannot edit the report that was last year because that has been closed as stated here. But now if we go and see the report, so this is how it looks when you draw it from RISMA directly. So you can see that here, B1, we see the templates that we filled. You can see all the data here. All the blue data is the ones that have been added here for this company XYY. Yeah, and this is how it looks. And of course, you can still make edits here and make it prettier if you want. But this is a good starting point. Okay, let's go back to the demo. Yes. So here, also on the management reporting, you can create new reports and you can close the reporting year, which essentially saves all the data to your previous reports. And also in the compliance projects, you have different ways of showcasing your data. So in dashboards and reports, you can draw different reports, and in the supervisor tab, you have this nice overview of your work and all the tasks that are linked here. Yeah.
Then might stating something, I think you have been working a lot with CSRD customers and a little bit VSME in the gap analysis that wanted to kind of structure the work.
Yeah, they have, so you have, this gives you an overview of like all the different tasks. So we were talking about the gap analysis and the tasks related to just the specific data points, but this gives you a good overview of, of all the different tasks related to the work you're doing in RISMA. We've talked about it in actions and controls is RISMA speak, and a lot of people know what that means, but just like an action is a one-time thing and a control is the recurring governance setup that you have to revisit and improve on your compliance work.
Exactly. Yeah, and we'll look at actions and controls in RISMA in a moment, but let's go to the policies first. So here you can create your policy structure, add all your documentation, map your policies, etc. So for example, continuing with the B tree about the emissions example, you could add your climate change policy here and link it to that node. Then in the actions, we mentioned this as well. So you have these general actions that we've created for general defining ESG objectives and so on. And then we also have these reporting actions that are specific for each of the disclosures. So these are something that you can work with, and of course you can create your own as well. Then in the controls overview, we have also created some general controls that you can use, such as reviewing your ESG strategy and identifying some sustainability issues. Here, we wanted to show that we've also created this example in this demo with this Nordic company structure. So this organizational structure that has different controls linked to different departments. So for example, in Denmark, you can see that you can create this kind of structure and link all the controls to different organizations or departments. So that's also a nice feature that we have. And if we look at this one, so this is a control for the Finnish department to report on their total energy consumption. And you can see that we've added the responsible user as the ESG manager in Finland. The organization is linked to the Finnish department. And this is set as a quarterly control. So it needs to be completed by them 4 times a year, and the responsible will get an email notification, and it will be shown on their My page. So it's easy to keep track of your tasks. And here you can see in the history tab all the history of when this control has been completed and with what data. Yes, and we can then go look at the annual overview, which is a nice feature in the controls where you can see all of your controls in this annual overview. And you can, of course, filter this with different departments and different tags and frameworks, etc. And here you can see, for example, when different controls have been completed on time, when they've been completed after the deadline, and which ones are waiting for review. You can see that this is a quarterly control that you need to report on, and these are, for example, monthly controls. So you kind of see this overview, which is nice. And this is, of course, also reflected on your My page. So going back to where we started, all the controls and tasks that you have will be shown here on your My page. So that is that. Anything to add in the demo before we go back to the slides? I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think you covered it well.
Yeah. So going back to the slides. Here we go.
Yeah. I just I've added this very light slide to the end. It's actually more to make sure you have it in the slide deck that you'll be sent afterwards after the webinar. But this is just a 5-step implementation approach or best practice of how we help you actually implement VSME in your organization. As a customer success manager, this is a tool that we use and work with together. All of the stuff that we've just gone through in terms of all the different like modules and like with the user access and delegation and the controls and how to actually go through the questionnaires. All of that is something that we go through together, or that we actually at least talk about and help you get started. So yeah, this is a 5-step approach. We're all different, you're all different, you have different resources and sizes in terms of organizations. So this is an approach that we, of course, adapt to your situation and your needs. And yeah, it's in the slide deck, so you can go back and see it. We won't go through the different steps, but I just thought it would be neat to show you that we actually have an approach that we, as a tool that we start off with once we begin implementation. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. All right. So now we have time for some questions, if we have any, Andreas.
Yes, we actually do have a couple of questions, but feel free to add more. But there's one about the policy module, whether or not it's possible to communicate or distribute these policies, procedures to basically internally, externally. Maybe you can touch upon that.
Yeah.
And then we also have a question about the DMA and if it's still possible, how you would work with that.
Yeah, maybe we can go back to the demo and show. So considering the policies.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah,
I can start off at least. This comes out of the box, but we can definitely work with the structure and the setup. If you go into one of them, the climate change policy. So in terms of distribution, so you have all the documentation in here. You can link to it or add it in here. And in terms of communication, you can create these sign-offs. So you can actually request people to sign off if they've read your policy. So there's, in terms of distributing, you can definitely do that externally, and you can add as many as you like, and you can add comments as you can see there. And you'll get an overview of like who you've sent it to, who's replied. You can send a reminder if you've sent it to, let's say, 20 people and only 10 have signed off, then you can see who hasn't replied yet and send them a reminder. So it's, yeah, you can definitely distribute it and in that way make sure that the policies live and are implemented throughout your organization. Yeah, it's a sign off. So people sign off. There's not like a communication back to you, but yeah, you can definitely distribute it across your organization.
Actually, an example here that I've been asked a few times also is that you might want people in the organization signing off on something that we did an update here. Be aware that we are now using this, and we're not using water bottles. We're only having something tap water. Or maybe a bad example, but it could also be that you want to sign off from stakeholders or companies that you work with down your value chain, so signing off on your code of conduct. Then you could add your code of conduct here, asking your business partners to sign off on your code of conduct, and in the awareness you can then follow, did they sign off on it, and you can showcase that as well, that it is something that you are actively working with.
Yeah, with some companies we've done some test runs as well, so that we can also like work together and say, okay, we want to test this out before we actually go live with a larger sign-off campaign.
Yeah. All right.
Then I think there was a question about double materiality, and if you still want to work with it, and I think we have a.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Maybe I can talk a bit about that. It is actually it's the same solution containing some dummy data for us to be able to show what RISMA can do. But in this case, it might be a bigger company choosing to work both with the double materiality assessment, but also wanting to work with contract management and the companies that we work with to have more of like the mapping of all their stakeholders and their supply chain and so on. But keeping to the double materiality assessment, it's possible to work here with your double materiality assessment. It's mapped at the same way as you know from CSRD. So it follows these 10 areas: climate change, pollution, water and marine resources, and so on. And then under each topic, you can upload, or you can, if you already done your double materiality, or you can input examples here on different impacts or risk or opportunities that you find. If you haven't worked with DMA, this is quite heavy, but for those of you who know what it's about, you can, for example, open the first risk that we identified. So here you identified that you have some downtime on your production sites due to flooding. So you can describe what you find out. You can do an assessment. You can document why. Did I choose that it's low on magnitude and high on likelihood, likely on likelihood, and you will get this automation in the heat map showing there. But if you want to follow the whole the steps that is required, if you do report on CSRD, and if you still want to follow the steps, you can do a pre-assessment on every impact and risk and opportunity, and this follows the requirements in CSRD. That you need to say, is it an impact or is it a risk or opportunity? It will filter on what information that you need to give and all the documentation that needs to be in place. Obviously, if you're reporting on VSME instead of CSRD, you don't necessarily need all of this documentation if you're not going through an audit process. But if you are taking this through an audit process, this will also keep all the information there for the auditor to be able to see your reasoning and your argument for reporting on what you are reporting on.
Yeah.
So this is very much one example on an identified risk for your company. And then of course, like you showed, there's a lot of dashboards and reports that you can collect to get a complete overview of what is risk or opportunities that I'm responsible for. Maybe you want to see the impact, risk and opportunities for Finland only and not from Denmark and Norway, or you want to see it collected as the whole company. So leaning on the same functionalities that Yasmina just explained about.
Yeah, and maybe just to quickly mention, so the VSME solution that you saw with the 5 modules open, or 4. This is what you need for VSME, but then we also have the more extended solution that you can also, of course, get if you need to work with your risk and contracts, incidents, companies. So it is possible to add different modules to your RISMA solution, basically.
Yeah.
Yep.
Any more questions?
Yeah, maybe just one last question here. So how would one get started in a solution in RISMA?
Do you want to?
Yeah, I can.
Maybe you can jump to the compliance actually, but just to say that everything here is pre-mapped.
Yeah.
So you start with not a solution like this containing dummy data, but it still contains all the relevant information from the standard.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you access your own solution, you wouldn't see it be blue because that means you've actually answered the questionnaire. But yeah, this is what you would see. And to get started, well, what I always do is have initial conversations with customers and figure out where are they, what resources have they worked with ESG reporting before? Do they know the VSME or the CSRD quite well? We have some customers who will probably go for VSME instead of CSRD, then they know quite a bit. But to get started, it's about figuring out what's the team, who's working with this, who needs access to the system, and who, like, is there anything in terms of user access, who's a system owner or project owner, and who needs like various levels of access. And yes, I mentioned before with the slide of the 5-step approach, the beginning is very much about like the scoping and mapping, and for that conversation is sparring about what to do and how to go about it. How do you best go back and talk to your team and your organization about how to do this in RISMA. So it's very much a collaboration between us, me, and the team in terms of getting started.
Yep. Nice.
Yeah, maybe just one comment in terms of if you're using RISMA and have CSRD and are no longer in scope or potentially no longer in scope based on what will be decided at some point, you can quite easily is maybe a strong word, but what we'll make sure is to give you access to both compliance projects for a period of time so that you can actually smoothly move over from this larger CSRD to the more, let's say, manageable VSME. I think that's fine, fair to say, without hurting anyone's feelings. So of course we'll help you to do that if that's necessary.
Nice. Anything else? Let's jump back to the slideshow. If there are no more questions, then I guess we are ready to wrap up and say thank you so much for being here with us today. Yeah.
Thank you.
We look forward to talking with you. If you have any further questions or wanted to have your own questions that you didn't get to ask here, and ask them at a meeting where we can maybe show you as we go.
Have a nice day.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.